Okay, we're starting. Hello, first of all, to everyone watching live. This is a TFB first interview. I'm Russell Dolag from Unity, EF State, and the FSM. We're interviewing, we're very happy to interview and very honored to have Tony Debrum with us tonight. For those of you at home a little confused, Tony's with us from Madro, and I'm actually in Honolulu. It's the first we're using Google Hangouts, so just thank you for everybody watching live and everybody watching on later. Thank you very much, Mr. Debrum, for joining us. We're live right now.
I'm delighted to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, just a little quick history for everyone who isn't familiar with Mr. Debrum. Mr. Debrum is a fellow Xavier alumni, class of 62, was it?
62.
Yeah. He was also involved in the first compact negotiations with the RMI, involved with the formation of the RMI Constitution. He's a very big climate change activist, activist for a nuclear-free world, former Foreign Affairs Minister for the RMI, the Right Livelihood Award recipient, also known as the Alternative Nobel Prize, and he's also a Nobel Peace Prize nominee this year. And just again, a very big honor to have you with us tonight. You could have spent your Friday night any other way, but thank you for joining us.
I'm honored. It's indeed a pleasure to be with
you. You know, just listing all that stuff earlier, I said, you know, you've quite have a very impressive body of work, and a lot of people look up to you and regard you as a hero. And I think just the first question I want to know is, who were your heroes and who do you look up to?
I've got some in the room right now with me. And who are also with us in the Paris meeting, COP21. We have, that's kind of, it's not a fair question to ask, and for me to answer that would take hours. There are many people I consider to be heroes. I do not consider myself one. I think that I am doing what I was taught to do and what I believe is the right thing to do in terms of sharing views that need to be shared and promoting ideas that do not seem to get the kind of attention and focus that we think they must have.
Wow, that's very, thank you for that. It's very humble of you to say. I know earlier you said we said you went to Xavier, and I was trying to find out where you went to college, but I couldn't find anything. Where did you study?
I went to Chaminade University and University of Hawaii. Graduated at University of Hawaii in '68.
Oh wow, we're actually at Chaminade University right now.
My regards to Brother Bernie.
Oh, okay, we'll do. I just wanted to talk about your education a little bit because you know, you seem you're a very educated person, and you come off as very intelligent in your speeches. But we noticed, in your speeches, that you insert a lot of traditional knowledge into it. Like you use certain stories and words and lessons. And I'm really curious, where did that practice come from?
I was brought up by my grandparents, not by my parents, as is the case with many other Micronesians then and today. And as such, you were brought up in a different way. You got to appreciate your surroundings and your harmony with nature in a different way than many of our youngsters are experiencing these days. For that reason, it was always part of the conversation. It was always part of the experience that whatever was being shared, whatever was being discussed, whatever was being learned or wondered about had some connection with our own human harmony with nature. And that has been my way of approaching discussions, debates, public meetings, even negotiations for compact and for the reemergence of our sovereignty, the formation of our constitutional government. All of those played a very important part in the decisions that were subsequently made. So that has been, I don't want to call it style, maybe modus operandi, but it is a way of ensuring that roots are taken care of, but be progressive and looking forward to adjust to the new discoveries and technologies of doing things without forgetting where you come from. And that's most important.
Would it be a fair thing to say if our oral traditions were a big influence in that?
Absolutely, oral traditions. That was all there was. There were no computers. Nobody had any written history of anything where we were growing up, and that's why we had to depend on that. But in retrospect, I'm just so thrilled and so glad that that's the way it happened.
One of a lot of us, especially people in this room right now, we really admire how that you're such an effective communicator. And is it just that whole upbringing in your work that developed that, your proficiency in that?
I argued a lot with the Jesuit priest, Xavier.
I could see that. So did I.
You know that this philosophy there, you were taught to question authority, but you went to defend your position. And I think that really wore off on many of us that are proud to claim a piece of that history.
Mm.
I think that you will find amongst your own peers that have graduated in recent times that they have the same kind of drive, same kind of outlook on what's out there. Is it for real? Can I make it better? And how can I tweak it? And I think that holding on to that philosophy is probably a good way of ensuring some kind of a balance in your life.
You mentioned how you use the style a lot, especially in your work with politics. I just want to kind of guide the conversation a little bit more into politics, specifically RMI politics. Recently, the U.S. said it's pulling out of the Pacific Tuna Treaty, and should we be worried about that?
I think it's a matter to be concerned about, but I don't think it's a matter to be worried about. Big difference. If there is a problem in accommodating a political agreement, that's what this is. It's a political agreement.
Right.
Those answers are always out there. And if there is a way that we can draw support from our Pacific partners and friends, there is a way there too, both in the Pacific way and in the modern way of communicating with each other. Just recently, I attended the inauguration of the new governor of Ponape, Governor Peterson, who would be a nephew to me in my extended Ponape family. And during that service, one of the traditional leaders gave a speech in which he said this: for every problem of the modern world that you will face, there is a traditional solution that can be drawn upon. And I think that there is a very important lesson in that statement. I came away from the inauguration with that just ringing in my mind, and it's still going. And I think that that is a good guiding star for all of us, old ones that are fading away, and the younger bright stars that are coming, that are just rising.
Well, thanks for sharing that, because I think a lot of us, especially younger people, kind of tend to forget that, or not really ascribe to that belief that everything new is best. But there's nothing new under the sun, I guess we could say.
Nothing.
Um,
We have a back to your tuna question. We have a tuna resource,
right.
and we had a way of dealing with it with the countries that wanted to exploit that resource. We have done some improvements over the past decades on just how much of that return comes to us and not to those who exploit it. And we have a very healthy, sustainable management scheme for our tuna resources. If people want to join with us in maintaining that, there will be ways to accommodate those who want to fish in our waters. But it cannot be just us wanting one thing and the foreign fishing countries wanting another, and throw it up in the air and hoping that some solution will come out. I think it will. I think the world cannot afford to operate without 54% of its tuna sources. And that's us.
That's a pretty fair point, and I hope something gets resolved, because I really love tuna.
I hope so too. I have had this conversation with very high officials of the United States and the EU, and we promise to do our best to find solutions.
I'm sure we're in good hands. Just to focus on current RMI news, recently Dr. Hilda Heine was elected president. What was your reaction to that?
Ray, we have been daring in many other things in our very short history. We only became self-governing in 1979 and independent in 1986. We've taken some steps both in the domestic governance of our state and in the global community that have drawn surprise and admiration from the rest of the world. This is yet another one. We have a first lady president, a very smart one at that, and I think that she has all the support that she would need to make a very successful president, as well as to share this experience with those who will still think that the women still belong in the kitchen. And there are many in the Pacific who still believe that.
This past election, absentee voters were a really big deciding factor in a lot of the winners and the losers. Absentee votes, what can you comment on that?
In the Marshals, we have a constitution that respects the right of a person to vote if he has land rights, and it doesn't say where you should be in order to be eligible to vote. So absentee ballots have been part of the process. There are some administrative loopholes that need to be dealt with in order to ensure that process does not encourage abuse. And I think that each election we get better, but we still have a long way to go to make sure that it is in fact representative of the electorate. It's difficult to be able to ensure that our Marshallese citizens, for example, in Springdale, Arkansas, can master all the administrative procedures needed to vote in a valid election. But it will happen sooner or later. It's not perfect yet, but it'll get there.
Do you foresee absentee votes having a bigger role in future elections, or is it something we're going to try to rein in on?
Well, there are two lines of thinking on this. One is that there's got to be some kind of administrative control, so that, for example, in the case of the Philippines, they have a good record of your tax records, so that when you register to vote, you have to indicate one way or the other where you've been paying your taxes. In the case of the freely associated states, there is a provision where we can actually be allowed to pay home taxes in lieu of federal taxes, whatever in the United States that you live. But we have never triggered that since the coming into effect of the compact.
Wow,
There are those who
interesting.
say that should be kicked into effect so that there will be a way of controlling the absentee ballot issue. But there's always those that they would argue if you're not paying taxes, you shouldn't be. But that's not the way our Constitution is written.
Okay. Speaking of votes, though, I think recently the RMI lost their UN vote. Is that something the RMI should be concerned about?
That's actually an annual event, and
Right.
the secretary. If you interview the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the Marshall Islands, Bruce Kitchener, who happens to be a PATS, not a Xavier graduate, I want to. He will shed some light on that issue, I'm sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think recently in a statement, the president said it was just a billing mistake or something like that.
No, it happens every year because we don't have the money to pay for all the different subscriptions, they call them, that we need to have updated in order to be able to vote, say, at WHO or UNESCO or all those different agencies.
Right.
And sometimes we have development partners who volunteer to pay those fees for us at the UN. This not just for the Marshalls, but for other countries similarly situated.
Right.
So we get reminded, and the UN sends out a reminder, and there's a flurry of action, and then finance issues a check, and pretty soon we're in good shape again. I had the unfortunate experience of having to deal with this particular issue in the context of the world police, Interpol.
Oh.
Well, we needed information from Interpol, but couldn't get it because we were not up to date on our fees. So we had to very quickly resolve that problem. The way we handled that emergency was we asked FSM to check it out for us. So
Wow.
FSM. So we cooperated with FSM and Palau in those issues as well.
It's a good thing to see our countries cooperating.
All the time.
You know, it might just be a coincidence, or maybe it's just me, but when it comes to the UN votes, it seems that the RMI's vote is always in line with the US. So is that just a coincidence, or?
You guys have done some good homework, huh? Yeah, on the question of Israel and Cuba, that would appear to be not any kind of coincidence. It could also be interpreted by many as some form of coercion. I don't think that's the case at all. But it does look like that because sometimes in many instances we get set aside with the U.S. and the three freely associated states and Israel on one side and the rest of the world on the other. But those are issues having to do with our very special relationship with the only small island country that has always had a Israel council, honorary council in our state from the beginning of this government. And FSM and Palau, I understand, have had the same.
Speaking more about our relationship with the U.S., a lot of people feel that it's probably just this political atmosphere right now, but a lot of people feel like the U.S. hasn't been keeping their end of the COFA agreement, and we feel like our countries are. And do you think people are right to think or feel that way?
Let me understand your question once more.
Okay.
Saying that people are thinking that we are living up to our
No, that the U.S. is not living up to their end of the COFA relationship,
but that we are.
but we are.
I think, but that's a personal opinion.
Okay.
I think that many people have reason to believe that, given the way things are going. We have not in any way uh, denied any of the rights or the privileges that we have given to the United States under the Compact of Free Association from the beginning. But since that time, since the effective date of the Compact of Free Associations, free association between all the three states and the United States, there have been many cases where rights that were won in very hard-fought negotiations, 17 years of negotiations, have been undermined. For example, full faith and credit, FEMA, and some of the others are the right to reside and work and go to school in the United States. Some of those have been watered down a little bit from the original concept of free association. So yes, there are those who can say that, and I think with some justification.
2023 is coming up. The compact grants are going to stop, and the trust fund isn't enough. What do you think is likely to happen at 23 during those renegotiations? Are we going to sign up again, or
we'll find another way? I mean, it doesn't. When you say that Title II of the compact is going to end, that means that the current agreement that was negotiated in fulfillment of Title II under the compact is slated to end in 2023. It was originally slated to end in 2020, and then 2000. For us, it was 2001. So we had to negotiate a new one that went on to 2023. But when the 2023 deadline was imposed, it was with the understanding that a trust fund would be established that would make up for that shortfall from 2023. From the beginning, the United States Congress itself, the GAO, testified in the hearings in the Congress that trust fund was not going to make it. Sorry, guys. Yeah. And many people said, yes, we get it, but we'll find ways to add on to the trust fund so that it in fact meets that requirement come 2023. Clearly, it's not going to meet that requirement. Clearly, we need to find a way to ensure that constitutionally mandated services, health, education, legal services, transportation, and some of the others that we need to keep our governments moving are funded. But we will have to be much more imaginative, and we have to throw our net a little wider than just the United States to deal with these, unless the United States steps up.
Are you talking about making new relationships with other countries like China, or I don't know what else?
With any and all partners. China just happens to be a moving giant in the Pacific and in the world. So everyone asks that question. Are you contemplating? I don't think we're contemplating free association with China at this point. But there are China and some other countries that we have not had such close relationships with in the past can step up and provide for in the economic area and in other areas of social development.
I think a lot of people are wondering that just what's going on, especially with the FSM and China's interest in the region. And I think a lot of people might just question if RMI is going to go in with some sort of relationship with China, if, with the U.S. having Quads, what kind of issues might come out of that?
The Marshalls and Palau have diplomatic relationship with ROC Taiwan, Republic of China, Taiwan. FSM has China. So FSM is sandwiched here. But we cooperate very closely on all matters except for the diplomatic issue. when it comes to recognition of Taiwan. The agreement that we came away with from Paris, for example, would not have been possible without Chinese cooperation. So looking at what's going on out in the Pacific and vulnerable states, and also asserting its own superpower muscles. But those will remain for the next governments to check out. But the options are always open. We are a free country of the UN, and so is China. And I think that about half of the Pacific countries have relationships with China, and the other with Taiwan.
You just mentioned Paris just a little while ago. I kind of want to steer our conversation towards there now, if you don't mind. You played such a pretty pivotal part at the Conference of Parties, and I just was curious how you felt about the Paris deal and what you got out of it.
The Paris deal was a hard-fought deal, a conclusion that could only have been reached by the fact that vulnerable states were able to put their agenda items on the table and get the attention of the big movers and shakers of the global community. The RMI delegation in Paris was successful because we had the greatest team that was able to put together, in my opinion, and I know the other team very, very well, from the other small countries as well as the big countries. And we were many very important people in this world came up to me personally to say, we are really jealous of your team. We wish we could have one like yours. Honest to God. And I take that to be the best mark of success that they could ever put on us, was the fact that we were able to reach everyone and play such an important part in the bringing together of like-minded countries in the process, because it had to be done that way. We're a small country, and we are partners with other small countries that we would not have been able to do that without the kind of cooperation that we were able to muster from, or to elicit from the other big countries. But the important thing, and I will go to my grave saying this, the important thing about Paris was that the small country demonstrated to the world that we can in fact be an effective voice in international diplomacy. And we were able to do that because our team taught us the best. From the NGO, from the government side, from the various input that we got from the international groups, and our legal counsel was top-notch. That provided us with legal advice and technical assistance in understanding this whole thing. I thought that without that bundle, without that group together, we would not have been half as successful as we were. And we are still trying to digest that at this point. How far it's quite unbelievable, and we're very proud of our achievement there.
I gotta say that's some very impressive teamwork, and we're pretty thankful for all you guys did there.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'd be quick to advise that also other big countries are continuing to send messages. Even yesterday and today, we're still receiving messages of gratitude from countries like Germany, like Colombia, like the EU, the EU Commission, and many who are saying, hey guys, thank you so much for what you did at that Paris. So it's continuing. And the momentum, I think, is still strong to make sure that now, and the execution of whatever we agreed to is done in a very effective way.
This year, you weren't reelected. Is that gonna affect your role in all this work that you've been doing, or are you still gonna be doing it?
Voters always know. I think they maybe think I'm too old. But I'm not ready to slow down. I'll do what I can where I can. Um, I think that we're in good hands. We'll continue to lead where we've led, and that work, hard work we put into put us where we are today is not going to be all in vain. We also have very, very talented people who will follow us to do these things and to carry on. There's a lot more understanding amongst and between countries in the Pacific because of what we did, and I think that the job will be a lot more, well, a lot less stressful for the ones that follow because of some of the things that we were able to accomplish in our last 4 years of work.
Well, it's all very impressive work, and we just gotta express our gratitude for all the hard work that you yourself and this whole team that set out. We're we're just so impressed by it. It's really good, and we're hoping for more good results, especially
is-
with our youth.
Without sounding like a Jesuit priest at Xavier, let me say this.
Okay.
For your generation and the ones that will follow you, that all of this work was done. Our days are numbered, but I can very confidently, I can say with confidence. Let me just reword that. I can say with full confidence that what we have done, we're proud of. We think it was the best that we could do under the circumstances, and that it will lead to something better in the coming days. Because we still need something better. We still haven't reached 1.5. We still haven't gotten everybody to sit down to do their 5-year reviews, to see if people will raise their ambitions and make sure that the pathway that was created is followed, and not just something that you can put up on the wall. And that's the part now. The execution, the implementation of the agreement, and how it affects the small island countries, to buy us time so that when it's your time to work on it, you will have a little bit more breathing space than we would have had we not succeeded in the past.
Just to kind of move on to another big work you're doing with another team, kind of segueing into it. Nuclear Survivors Day is March 1st.
Yes.
And what's the significance of that for you?
On March 1st, 1954, I stood on the beach at Ligib and watched Bravo go off. And until today, I'm over 70 years old, I still get chicken skin every time I think about it. So that memory is also a driver of all that I do in public life. It has been marred over the years with all kinds of crazy and unacceptable human errors and human mistakes, and some deliberate, some not so deliberate. But nevertheless, it's a sad period in the history of our relationship with our friends in the United States. And the best thing that we can do about that is to bring it to closure. We cannot reach closure without full disclosure of what happened. And that is really the only thing that's holding anything up from happening, from sealing that wound and letting that peace be restored. It's that we cannot access information the United States considers to be in their national interest to protect and to keep secret. In order for us to make judgments, clear and educated judgments about what we should do about our future, should people be allowed to live on those islands? Should we be allowed to live in these islands? These decisions need to be made based on information that we do not have and only the United States has. So we cannot allow the nuclear fire to die yet. It must continue to shine on the darkness that is the secrecy that covers this whole business of nuclear arms, nuclear, not just weaponry, but also those weapons that are being developed to deliver nuclear weapons, as well as the secrets, the dark secrets of the so-called peaceful use of atomic power. All of these things need to be put on the table in order for the world to realize that with climate change, the nuclear threat is much, much more real than many people would assume. Because not only is it being threatened by supposedly intelligent people against each other, but there are also nuts out there, some of them very close to where we are, who may just push a button because they're crazy. And that's the end of the world. We need to get rid of the world of all nuclear weapons, and the sooner we do it, the better.
Yeah, the Nuclear Zero lawsuit, another thing you're doing with a team. I'm just curious, who's on your legal team working with you on the lawsuit?
We have a California firm that was identified by an old schoolmate friend of mine from the University of Hawaii, who are doing this pro bono.
Wow.
Yeah. And also a team of international lawyers from New York, from the Netherlands and from the UK, who have had experience with the International Court of Justice, who have been working with us on this for nearly the past decade. The important thing is that people should realize nobody's being flippant or being a wise guy and trying to take on the giants and say, hey, I'm going to throw stones at you, see what you can throw back at me. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is this. We're saying, look, we have a treaty to which we belong, the Marshall Islands and FSM and Palau, that you promised you are going to disarm. Instead of disarming, the world continues to arm itself to the teeth, develop even more horrific weapons of mass destruction. Again, in spite of the fact that everyone has signed up to the treaty. What we're saying is that Title VI of that treaty says that you're supposed to disarm and you haven't. So, ICJ, please tell us who's right and who's wrong here, so we can correct whatever is wrong and move forward. But in the meantime, it is not right to commit to a treaty obligation and then not do anything about it, and nobody says anything about it.
What would you say to people who would say, oh, it must take a lot of courage for such a small nation to face down such superpowers?
You know, you began your education with the high school education with the Jesuits. I started a little bit earlier with the Maryknoll sisters in Livelihood Award. And all the teachings that we received from our early teachers from abroad always stressed the fact that the United States is a peaceful nation, it's a just nation, it's a powerful nation, but it's fair. And all of these things were instilled in our psyche as youngsters being taught by very dedicated people from New York and other places in the United States. Mm. So when we do these things, we are doing it with that in mind, that the United States is supposed to be fair and just and righteous, and it's supposed to be protector of democracy and of fighting justice and all of these things. And everything we've done in this lawsuit is in keeping with that philosophy. So it should not come as something that's perceived as being against against UK or against the United States. It is something that they already profess to be champions of world peace. So it's in that light and it's in that spirit that we bring this to where it is. And I think that's why it's been effective. We are not threatening to anyone. It's the same thing in the climate change arena.
Yeah.
We could not threaten anybody. What we're going to tell Russia, if you don't do 1.5, we're going to do what to you? Nothing. we had a team of very capable young people who were making it shameful for them not to listen to us. And I think that's the success that we can gain in the climate change context. We can also gain in the nuclear-free world context. It needs to be understood from that. It's not somebody trying to muscle up to the big boys. No, we can't do that.
Not a David versus Goliath, just
No, should be. Although it's been described as that, it should not be seen. It should be seen as partners, as two friends. You know, you're going to drive home from a party, and you take the keys away from your friend because you don't want him to drive. You don't let friends drive drunk. We'll tell the United States, you got too many nuclear weapons, man. You got to put them away. That's what we're doing.
That's a great analogy.
Excellent. I'm glad you liked it.
I'm going to open up some questions from our viewers that we've collected. The first one I have is from another Xavierite, and coincidentally, he's my brother. His question from Sean Sulial in Pohnpei. What can we islanders, the little guys, do at home to save those from climate change?
What can we do to
help combat
the effects of climate change? Well, I think that I can speak for what's happening in the marshes, and I think it's coming together. It is not just the voice of government speaking up on this thing. It is based on widespread ground level, I call it sea level support. We don't have ground level from the communities, and especially the young people, the people that are organizing this interview with you, are the most trusted and the most important partners we have in this thing. It should not just be the government speaking up. It should be a combination of all the forces we have within our party. It's a matter of survival. So you cannot just assign it to one component of the community or the government or the country. It has to be everyone's concern. That's the most important. Second thing is that we should not take lightly what is being taught us by outside science and technology, because too many times when we are already living in harmony with nature, we are resistant to change. When we are told that this particular practice is not doing the country any good. For example, linking islands to another by causeway. We might have seen it 50 years ago as a way of development and progress. But now we're seeing it as one of the reasons why we become so vulnerable, especially atoll countries and atoll island communities, where we've actually smothered Mother Nature and not allow her to breathe freely between islands as she was used to over the centuries and thousands of years. There are things that we can do to marry up natural and traditional knowledge with science, and only the people in the communities can do that. Let the government appoint one or two people to go tell the United Nations how bad they're doing, but the work of climate change combatants must be in the countries itself and in our communities.
Okay. Next question from viewer, just real quick. Which island has the best sakao?
I am Naluk Pelablab of Matmanian. I am Sokiolap U. I am Luke in Kabilang in Kichi. I am titled in every municipality except Soques, and Soques doesn't have any good sakao. I cannot answer that for fear I might not get any more.
Oh, I'm gonna lose your sakao titles. Okay, that's a very good answer. Then they're all good.
I will refrain from that. But Still make some really good stuff out of our these days.
Okay. I think we're gonna kind of wrap up. We're kind of running out of time. So, if you wanted to leave any final thoughts for us and the viewers.
Yes. Two things, if I may. One is that in recent times, with the close friendship and brotherhood that is very clear amongst the leaders of Palau, the FSM, and the Marshals, we have a unique opportunity in the coming years to restore the honor and prestige that our ancestors were so proud to be part of in bringing these countries back to the forefront of anything that the world wants to decide and talk about, that we can participate, number one. And number two is that there is a word in Marshallese, Charaman. Charaman means good luck, good fortune, prosperity, progress. All of these things fall under Charaman. But Charaman is a word that's made out of two words, Chara and Emman. And Chara is friend, Emman is good, and good friend. So someone way down 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago must have really thought this over before declaring that I'm going to call this phenomenon Charaman. Charaman means good friends and good camaraderie and good working together is what makes things happen in this world. For the good and for the bad, but let's make it work for the good. Keep up the good work you guys are doing. St. Francis Xavier would be proud of you. I'm sure that they're extremely happy with what you're doing, but never forget to question authority and be prepared to stand your ground. Good luck to you guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again to Mr. Debrum for joining us, and a special thanks to all our viewers that were tuning in live. It was such a good honor. We hope everyone got a lot of good information out of this. Hopefully we continue to work on this really big groundwork that Mr. Debrum has laid for us. It's a great foundation. Just a few housekeeping things. I'm also Dolak here with you, TFB. Just want to thank everybody that helped put this together. Our crew in the back that you aren't seeing on the camera with us. There's a lot of people behind the cameras that really worked hard to make this pull through. So a big thank you to them also. Please remember to subscribe and like our pages and our YouTube, and we'll catch you again. And thank you again, Mr. Debrum.
Thank you, and I want to say that also for Kathy and for Milan. Without them, I could never have had the courage to sit in front of you. Also, we have the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Bruce, watching very closely. Our pets man. It's the pets man, not a Xavier man. Thank you so very, very much.
All right, thank you.